Welcome back to Northern Tales, where silence is broken and every woman's story finds its way back to her own voice. Tonight, we bring you the final part of Safiya's story. 11 years had passed since Safiya boarded that plane and disappeared from the life that had nearly destroyed her. She was no longer the frightened woman who slept with knives under her pillow. Today, Safiya was a highly respected cardiac nurse working in one of the largest specialist hospitals in Saudi Arabia. The journey had not been easy. England had been a shock. The cold, the accent, the food, the loneliness. There were days she wanted to quit. Days she sat in her tiny room crying from exhaustion. It was her assigned student mentor who finally insisted she see the university counselor. That was how she met Miss Rachel. At first, Safiya barely spoke. Years of fear had taught her to keep everything locked inside. But over months of counseling, Miss Rachel became the first person Safiya ever told the truth about her mother, her father, Lawal, the beatings, the hospital, the night she finally fought back. Miss Rachel listened without judgment, and little by little, Safiya began healing. Once the weight of her past stepped aside, something remarkable happened. She exhaled, and she also excelled academically. Her grades improved dramatically. Lecturers noticed her determination. Eventually, she secured a competitive scholarship to specialize in cardiac nursing. For the first time in her life, people were investing in her future instead of controlling it. 8 years after arriving in England, Safiya graduated as a cardiac nurse specialist. 3 years ago, an international recruitment agency visited the hospital where she worked. Several positions were available in Saudi Arabia. The salary was excellent. The benefits were generous. 4 specialist nurses accepted the offer. Safiya was one of them. Now she lived in a beautiful apartment provided by the hospital. She traveled when she wanted, bought what she wanted. No one checked her phone. No one controlled her salary. And sometimes when she sat on her balcony overlooking the city lights of Riyadh, Safiya would think about the frightened woman who once believed she had no choices. And perhaps that was the sweetest revenge of all. Safiya was 36 years old now. In the 11 years since she left Nigeria, she had never allowed herself to love again. Men had shown interest, but Safiya always found a reason to step away. The truth was simple. She trusted herself. She did not trust love. Not anymore. Then she met Mahmud. It happened by accident. Mahmoud's grandfather had been a regular patient at the cardiac clinic for almost 2 years. He was 85 years old, stubborn old man, and argumentative. He complained about medications, refused blood tests, argued with consultants, and regularly threatened to discharge himself. The staff dreaded seeing his name on the appointment list, except Safiya. For some strange reason, the old man liked her. Maybe because she never argued with him. Even drawing blood from him often became a 30-minute negotiation. You people enjoy torturing old men, he would grumble. And you enjoy making our jobs difficult, Safiya would reply. The old man would pretend to be offended, then eventually surrender his arm. That was how she met Mahmud. He always accompanied his grandfather to appointments. A tall, quiet engineer with gentle eyes and endless patience. While doctors and nurses battled the old man, Mahmud usually sat nearby, apologizing on his behalf. Please forgive him. Don't worry, Safiya would laugh. I have survived worse. At first, their conversations were brief, then longer. Then somehow they became a part of the clinic visits both of them looked forward to. They spoke about work, about books, about travel, about grief. Mahmud eventually told her about his wife. 5 years earlier, she had died in a car accident while pregnant with their third child. Neither mother nor baby survived. The loss had nearly destroyed him. Now he was raising 2 boys alone, 12 and 9. Safiya listened quietly because she understood grief. This deepened their friendship. Then one afternoon, while Safiya was helping his grandfather into a wheelchair, the old man leaned closer and lowered his voice. Do you know I have been telling Mahmud to marry again? Safiya nearly dropped the wheelchair handles. The old man chuckled. He needs a woman with patience. Then he pointed directly at her. A woman like you. Safiya smiled and said, No, it is you I like. I don't want Mahmud. The old man laughed so hard, the nurse beside him nearly scolded him. A year later, Mahmud proposed. He said, I love you, Safiya. And if you are willing, I would like us to build a life together. Safiya he asked Safiya for the first time, and she was surprised. Mahmud noticed this immediately. He quietly said to her, No pressure. I will wait for your answer. Now, 3 weeks later, Safiya stood in the hospital, reviewing the notes of a newly admitted patient. But she had not read the same paragraph successfully in about almost 10 minutes because her mind was somewhere else. Mahmud doesn't know the truth about her past. He knew she had left Nigeria. He did not know everything. He did not know of her father's neglect or Lawal's cruelty. Most importantly, he did not know that legally she had never divorced Lawal. Safiya knew one thing with absolute certainty. She could not build a new life while leaving the old one unfinished. That evening after work, she invited Mahmud to her apartment. When he arrived, she made tea, then sat opposite him. Her hands were trembling. Mahmud noticed immediately. What is it? He asked. Safiya looked at him, took a deep breath. For several seconds, she could not speak. Then finally, she looked directly into his eyes. There's something I should have told you a long time ago. And for the first time in 11 years, Safiya told someone everything. After she has finished telling him the story, she told him she has accepted his proposal if he still wants to marry her. But there's one condition, she said. Mahmud nodded. I have to go back to Nigeria. His smile faded slightly. To finish what I left behind, she continued, urgently. I understand, he said quietly. And that was the end of the discussion. Or so Safiya thought. 2 days later, she received a call from Mahmud's grandfather. My daughter, come and see me. Safiya smiled. Whenever the old man called her my daughter, it usually meant trouble. That evening, she drove to the family home. The old man was sitting on the terrace overlooking the garden. A blanket covered his legs. Age had weakened his body, but not his mind. Beside him sat another elderly gentleman. Safiya had never met before. After tea was served, the old man surprised her. Tell me your story. Safiya frowned. What story? All of it. The old man pointed to a chair. Sit. For almost 2 hours, Safiya spoke. The old man interrupted only occasionally to ask questions. When she finally finished, silence settled over the terrace. The old man stared into the distance for a long moment, then he sighed. No, Safiya blinked. No? I am not comfortable with you going to Nigeria alone. Safiya laughed softly. Grandpa, I am not that 25-year-old woman anymore. The old man ignored her completely. He turned toward the gentleman. This is Abdurrahman. The man nodded politely. Safiya greeted him. The old man continued. His father was my closest friend for over 50 years. Abdurrahman smiled. I work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Safiya's eyebrows rose slightly. The old man continued speaking as though discussing the weather. I contacted some people. Safiya stared. You what? The Saudi embassy in Nigeria is aware that you will be traveling. The old man took a sip of tea. If there is any problem whatsoever, assistance will be available. Safiya burst out laughing. Actual laughter. The kind she had not expected. Grandpa, honestly? The old man remained serious. I am not joking. But nobody wants me, Safiya replied. My father didn't want me. Lawal didn't want me. I left 11 years ago. She shook her head. I promise you there will be no problem. The old man looked at her carefully, then said quietly, My daughter, sometimes the people who do not value you are the same people who become dangerous when they discover your value. Safiya's smile disappeared. The old man continued, You left as a frightened woman. He gestured toward her. You are not returning as one. You are educated, successful, financially independent, and engaged to my grandson. His eyes narrowed slightly. That changes everything. For a moment, Safiya had no answer. Then the old man delivered his final verdict. Mahmud is going with you. Safiya opened her mouth. The old man raised a finger. That was not a suggestion. The discussion was over. 2 weeks later, Safiya and Mahmud landed in Abuja. The familiarity hit her immediately. 11 years disappeared in an instant. For a moment, she was 25 years again. Scared, running, and alone. Mahmud noticed the shift. He looked at her and said, You are not alone this time. Safiya nodded. Her first destination was her father's house. Because before she could close the chapter of her marriage, she intended to settle something much older. The death of a father who had failed his daughter. Her father's house stood exactly where it had always stood. A faded cream wall, the rusting gate, the cracked veranda where she used to sit shelling beans as a child. Even the old neem tree was still there. Time had touched everything, but somehow nothing had changed. Safiya stared at it for a moment before following Mahmud inside. The sitting room looked smaller than she remembered. Her father sat on one sofa, Maimuna on the other. Both looked much older. The years had not been kind. Safiya greeted them politely. They answered, but neither of them seemed to recognize her. She wasn't surprised. They had never really seen her anyway. Before she could introduce herself, a loud scream exploded from the doorway. Safiya! Safiya! A tray crashed onto the floor. Water splashed everywhere. Baba, the only woman who had ever shown her kindness in that house. Baba rushed forward and threw her arms around Safiya. My child, she screamed. Both women began crying immediately. For several moments, neither could speak. Across the room, her father and Maimuna sat frozen in disbelief. When everyone finally settled down, her father cleared his throat. Safiya, his voice trembled. My daughter, Safiya raised her hand. Please. The old man fell silent. She pointed towards Mahmud. This is Mahmud. We are getting married. Shock flashed across both their faces. I only came back because Lawal never properly divorced me before I left. She looked directly at her father. You are the one who gave me to him. So I want you to go and tell him to divorce me. Or I will take both of you to court and let the court grant the divorce. Maimuna gasped. How dare you speak to your father like that? Safiya slowly turned her head towards her. Just one look, nothing more. Maimuna immediately fell silent. The room became quiet. The father lowered his eyes, then spoke so softly that Safiya almost didn't hear him. Lawal is dead. The words hung in the air. What? He died 6 years ago. Safiya stared at him. Her father swallowed. After you left, he married again, then again, and again. All 3 women eventually left because of his violence. The last wife came from a family of thugs known in the area. People said her brothers were involved. One day, Lawal was badly beaten. They broke his back. He became paralyzed. Her father's voice grew quieter. He could no longer walk. No one stayed. Even his daughters returned to their mothers. He lived alone. The room was completely silent. 3 days after he died, the neighbors noticed a smell coming from the house. His eyes remained fixed on the floor. That was how they found him. Nobody spoke. Safiya sat very still. For years, she had imagined this moment. Imagined confronting him. Imagined hearing him beg. Imagined making him understand what he had done. Instead, there was nothing. No victory, no revenge, no closure. Just a grave somewhere. And a man who had destroyed his own life long before death arrived. And for the first time that day, Safiya finally exhaled. They left her father's house without saying goodbye. Her mission was accomplished. Outside, she invited Baba to visit them in their accommodation. Over dinner, Baba filled in the missing pieces of the family's story. Only Fahad, her younger brother, had truly prospered. He had become a doctor and lived quietly with his family. Her 2 sisters had both married and divorced. They now lived together in Abuja, surviving however they could. People talked. People always talk. Safiya wasn't interested in how they lived their life. That chapter no longer belonged to her. Instead, she apologized to Baba for disappearing all those years ago. Baba cried. Safiya cried too. Before they parted, she promised Baba to bring her for Hajj and she could come and stay for some time with them in Saudi Arabia. Safiya also searched for Hajara. She learned that she had moved away years earlier. Part of her wanted to find her. Part of her was ashamed. So she let it be. That evening, she and Mahmud sat discussing family when there was a knock on the door. They exchanged a look. They were not expecting anybody. Mahmud opened the door. Safiya's father walked in. For several moments, nobody spoke. Eventually, the old man sat down. Then, to Safiya's shock, he began to cry. She had never seen him cry in her life. Between tears, he spoke about her mother, how young he had been, how lost he felt after her death, how he did not know how to raise a daughter, how Maimuna had taken over the household, how life had become difficult, excuse after excuse, reason after reason, always finding someone to blame except himself. Safiya listened quietly, expressionless. When he finished, silence filled the room. Is that all you came to say? She said calmly. Thank you for coming. The old man stared at her. Then his voice hardened slightly. I am still your father. Safiya leaned forward, looking him directly in the eyes. She said, I know. And I also know that Allah will ask parents about their children. The room became silent. I spent my childhood fighting for ordinary kindness. My marriage fighting to stay alive. I was lucky you did not destroy me in your house. I was lucky Lawal did not kill me in his. Tears filled her eyes. Do you know what it feels like to spend your entire life begging to be treated like a human being? Her father lowered his head. Safiya stood. I don't have a father. I have a man who happened to be present when I was growing up. Then she pointed toward the door. Please leave. And this time he did. The following morning, just before their departure, another delegation arrived. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even Auntie Goshi, the same aunt who had once made her childhood miserable. None of them could meet her eyes. Most were crying, all wanted forgiveness. Safiya listened quietly, then said only one thing. I don't care enough to have a grudge against any of you. The room fell silent. Pray for Allah's forgiveness. That is the one you need. Then she walked away, and that was the end of it. Safiya returned to Saudi Arabia. A few months later, she married Mahmud. Together, they built a peaceful life. His two boys became hers. Later, Allah blessed them with 3 more children, 1 daughter and 2 sons. Years passed. Success followed success. But the achievement she was most proud of was not her career. It was the foundation she created. She called it Wake Up, a foundation dedicated to supporting abused women and vulnerable children. When she finally located Hajara years later, she persuaded her to become its first director. The organization grew rapidly, supported by Mahmoud's grandfather and many of his influential friends. Over the years, Wake Up helped hundreds of women rebuild their lives. One of them was Mariam, Lawal's daughter, who found herself trapped in an abusive marriage, remarkably similar to her father's. This time the cycle ended. Mariam walked away. Safiya helped her start again. As for her own father, she rarely thought about him. Eventually, at Mahmoud's insistence and the gentle pressure of his grandfather, she agreed to a limited reconciliation, but she never allowed him close enough to hurt her again. Some wounds heal, some simply become scars. Every now and then, usually before dawn, Safiya will remember the dream, the garden, the soft voice of her mother, the words that changed everything. Wake up, Safiya. She never forgot them. She prayed for her mother often, gave sadaqah in her name, and thanked Allah for the life she almost never had. Thank you for listening to Northern Sales. These have been Safiya's stories. Wake up, Safiya. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next week for a new story.